Hello and welcome to the Asylum. I'm your host, Don, and with me, as almost always, is Jeremiah.
I'm pretty sure that you've missed as many as I have missed.
Probably, but that's the intro, sir. That's how I do it. A time. When you do a video intro, next Asylum video, you can do the intro. How's that sound?
Okay.
All right.
Well, we are talking about a movie that's clearly written by Alexandre Dumas.
Other co-host.
Oh.
Mr. Mint. Mr. Mint, say hi to the internet. He's purring. You can't hear him, but he's purring. He says hello, internet.
So we're talking about a movie that was clearly written by Alexandre Dumas because, all the other ones are clearly written by the authors that they say they are.
I just want to put this out there, right? I don't think that Alexandre Dumas, if he were alive today, would be upset by this movie. On the other hand, H.G. Wells would have been upset by that movie.
To say the least, yes.
To say the least, he would have been upset. But I don't think Dumas would have been upset about this movie.
Possibly.
Yeah. But yeah, we're talking about the number tree Musketeers. Not to be confused with the word 3 Musketeers. It's the number.
And it came out exactly opposite another Three Musketeers movie, which we both love, in its own glorious way, complete with Orlando Bloom as the Duke of Buckingham, of which there's no one with that name in this movie, not even a Buckingham.
It's not true. There is a Buckingham in this movie.
There is?
There is, yes. We'll get there, because we got to talk about the plot. And when we get there, I will be like, that's Buckingham, and I'll explain how I know.
So, if you know Die Another Day, or Tomorrow Never Dies, you kind of know how this movie starts, but not. This movie starts in North Korea, where the Three Musketeers are breaking in there by having Aramis, who's played by a woman, be a prostitute they're bringing in for someone who looks like he's in prison.
Yeah, I thought that dude was like a POW at first, but no, he's apparently the boss, even though he's in a blank white room and he's only wearing a wife beater and he looks like he had the crap beat out of him recently. But
I was confused why they had it looked like a POW, but there were also missiles there.
Yeah, it made no sense.
But they bring her in there because they hired a foreign Eastern European, vaguely looking prostitute for him or something. And they go to the space. And they're actually just breaking in to gain control of the computer system for the Cardinal, codenamed Cardinal, I think. I'm not exactly sure. Who takes control and then opens fire on a passenger liner that's going over South Korea. And then they try to...
Our Three Musketeers all have a different expertise. So Aramis, who in the books was the most handsome one, is a femme fatale.
Who also uses swords.
Porthos is the...
And is a sniper, sorry. She's also the sniper.
She's also a sniper. Porthos is our computer expert who could not hit the broadside of a barn with a cannon.
But he has the most wit of them all.
Yes, he's the most witty. And Athos is the Asian guy.
Who does backflips.
Who does backflips constantly. It's like they were just like, can you do a backflip? And he's like, absolutely. They're like, you're hired. That's all we want you to do this entire movie is just backflips. And he's like, you got it, sir.
And so the Cardinal basically takes control of this thing, and they try to undo the missile launch, but the Cardinal takes out the plane anyway with drones. And
with some computer graphics that look like they are fresh from a Windows 98 computer. It looked like it was the CGI for the planes and everything flying was worse than Star Fox for the Super Nintendo. Like, it was insanely bad crap. But you know what? Doesn't matter. It was still enjoyable. So it's fine.
And
It's fair.
so they go to the airfield to try to escape. Their helicopter gets gunned down.
Yes.
And then they're shooting at lots of things, but there's no one there shooting. They're just like shooting.
Everywhere.
And you're not going
And
to see what they're shooting at.
Everybody in this movie has the accuracy of a stormtrooper, not the stormtroopers that killed Luke's aunt and uncle. Every other stormtrooper ever.
Oh, and Aramis gets a shotgun. Well, actually, this might be later. That clearly was an airsoft gun that I had in high school that was you bought from Walmart for $20, but they painted it to look black. And I like it how they don't even look around corners. They just like go and shoot just to make sure no one's there. Like I do in a
corner fire.
That's what I do in first-person shooters. You know, this shoot to make sure no one's there. And then they did take over a plane that's apparently has Korean writing in it, even though I know for a fact the standard for piloting is English. I don't. They might have Korean writing somewhere in there, but they'd also have English. Yeah. Unless they got the, because there wasn't, if I recall it, there's a very famous airplane crash that existed because the instructions for the plane that they got was in Russian, and after that they standardized it all.
I'll take your word for it.
There isn't that airline disaster one the Smithsonian Channel has, but and then they take off.
You like those?
And then you see the president get talked to by a general who's like, "Oh no, did you hear it happen?"
Literally the most intelligent president I think I've seen in an action movie in a hot minute.
He's like,
because this general is like, hey, North Korea, or the Musketeers were in North Korea and they blew up a plane. And he's like, where are you getting this information? I need more proof before we do anything about this at all.
He's like, no. Wait, our elite fighting force? Yep, they were in North Korea. Okay, do you know why? Well, they blew up a plane. Are you sure? Yeah, should we do something about it? I think we need more information because why would they do that?
Do you have proof that they were there? Like, we know they were there, but he's just like, do you have proof that they were there? He's like, well, not really. And he's like, okay, well then no, we're not doing anything. Move out. Get out of here. And they just like moved on.
And this general, mind you, looks like Rob Lowe and Kevin Bacon had a baby.
Rob Lowe and Kevin Bacon's love child, Rob Bacon.
Kevin Lowe.
Kevin
Lowe.
Sounds like a new rap song.
And then anyway, I introduced to D'Artagnan, who's hot.
Now we get D'Artagnan, who is a beautiful Indian?
South Asian, Indian, something like that. Asian,
very, very beautiful woman, who is
works for the FBI.
No, she works for Army CID, but the description of the movie says that she works for the NSA, but she does not.
What is Army CID?
I don't know what it stands for, but she says it repeatedly throughout the movie that she works for the Army CID. Counterintelligence Division, I think, is what it stands for.
Well, her first scene is her basically watching shows in foreign languages and translating it into like
another foreign language.
Another foreign language for fun. Like, she's watching like a Korean rom-com or something like that and translating it into like Arabic because she could.
This guy that she works with, Rob Constance, Ben, do not bite me. Rob Constance comes in and is like, what are you doing? And she like explains, and he's like, why? And she's like, for practice. And you're like, all right, I'll accept that. But one of the things I very much enjoyed about this movie is the name drops, because the guy who comes to talk to her, his name is Rob Constance. Constance in the book was D'Artagnan's lover before he met the Lady de Winter. So that's like, oh, cool. That's an interesting name drop, because like we already knew that we were going to get a Lady de Winter, and we knew we were going to get.
She was his lover throughout most of it. Lady de Winter is kind of the one who steals him and then dies of poisoning or something. Lady de Winter is like an on again, off again thing, not Constance.
Constance is constant. Yeah, so it was a good name drop. So anyway, D'Artagnan, who is a woman, she decides she's trying to move up, right? She's just low level. She's got a lot of skills, And she goes and meets with the general that was just talking to the president, like trying to talk to him about like, hey, can I like do something instead of just being here? And he's just like, you be patient. But also, I heard you're really good at sword fighting randomly. And she's like, yeah. And he's like, someday we'll have to have a sparring match. This comes back. This is what they refer to as a Chekhov's gun. It will come back.
Well, and
so
then
she
her
goes
friend
back.
Constance says, here's something that I've been told to do, so you should go check this crazy guy out. And she goes and finds this guy who looks like LeVar Burton lost some weight, but he's actually an actor who's been in a lot of movies, like a lot of movies. He's just a really skinny LeVar Burton. But and it's Planchet who is basically saying, here's a conspiracy theory.
What's funny is that you say that. The movie I most remember him for is Friday the 13th 9, Jason Goes to Hell, where he is a lot more heavy set. And then in this movie, he's definitely lost some weight since then. Now, granted, Jason Goes to Hell came out in what, 99 or something. So it been 24 years or so. So Ben.
But and he basically acts like a crazy person who's like,
Also,
have you heard of the Three Musketeers? Have you heard of this? Have you heard of this? And she's like, like the book.
We glossed over this. His name is Planchet. Planchet was D'Artagnan's servant boy in Three Musketeers.
Oh, that's true. I forgot about that.
But
the actor, just so you know, we don't forget about it, is Stephen Williams.
Yep.
Has been in a lot of stuff. He was in, like, recently he's been in stuff like Birds of Prey. He's been in, there was the Waco TV series recently. He was in that one. He was in the show Snowfall. He's been in Blackish. He's been in Yellowstone. So you've probably seen his face a lot. He was Leroy Hanlon in It. I don't remember who Leroy Hanlon is.
He's it's from a flashback.
Is he like the dad?
I think he's the dad, if I remember correctly.
He was in the show The Leftovers, which is excellent. He was in Supernatural as Rufus Turner.
Yeah.
He was in 22 Jump Street as Commissioner Adam Fuller. He was in Jack the Giant Slayer. All this was after this one. Before this, he was in Criminal Minds. He was in Walker, Texas Ranger. He was in Monk, Veronica Mars, Stargate, X-Files, LA Law, the movie. He was in, there's a whole lot more. He was in the X-Files video game, which I'll forgive them for. He was in the Omen TV movie as Dr. Cornelius. He was in Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. He was in Jason Goes to Hell, as you mentioned. He was in the show LA Law. He was in Living Color. He was in the 21 Jump Street series because he's Captain Adam Fuller in 21 Jump Street, the series from the 80s, like 90-something episodes. And just, he's been in lots of stuff, so you probably recognize his face. He was even in Remington Steele, for crying out loud. And Dukes of Hazzard.
What entertains me is he's in 2 movies that you and I were talking about earlier today.
Yep.
Yeah.
But he basically says, here's this drive, here's some crazy things.
And then D'Artagnan's just like, bro, I need you to calm down. And then he lays hands on her, and she does not appreciate that and proceeds to hurt him. And whilst she is hurting him, he finally like starts talking at least semi-normal, because he realizes that like he's going a little off the deep end and she's not picking up what he's putting down. And whilst that's happening, Winter shows up.
Okay, here's something that's kind of funny. So she busts in and they just kind of go out the back, okay? And they're going down this hallway together. And while they're going, they shoot Planchet and kill him. But later on in the movie, there's a line where D'Artagnan goes, he was alive when I last left him, which he clearly was not. He was full of holes and dead.
He was shot in the back, and you watched him die.
A lot. He wasn't shot once. He was shot a lot. And then she runs and escapes in this alleyway by grabbing a sign, that banner that she goes, and the banner, when it rips down, makes the weirdest noise I have heard in one of these movies. It's basically like,
Fart banner.
Really? Your banner was a fart?
So she gets back and makes a report off screen, and she gets interviewed by this guy from Internal Affairs.
Instead of her boss.
And instead of her boss, instead of Bob Constance, she gets interviewed by this other guy, and he starts accusing her of selling state secrets. And she's having none of that. And so he then name drops the Cardinal again, and she comes to the realization that this is a frame up. And so she has the most logical reaction to this, which is to beat the ever-loving crap out of this guy.
So I didn't understand. Is the guy basically saying, if you want out, you need to do this, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, beat me up? Or is he basically saying, aha, we got you, ha, ha, ha?
He's saying, aha, we got you, ha, ha, ha. So he
because
is
it could have
like...
been the other one too, but this is the Asylum. I don't know.
Yeah, no, he's saying like, hey, we have all of this fake evidence against you. You can't do anything about it, but we can make it go away if you play ball. But if you don't play ball, Cardinal's going to get you. And she's like, I ain't having none of that. And she proceeds to beat the living crap out of this guy. It's pretty good. I enjoyed watching her beat this guy.
And she escapes by basically going into the janitor closet, mixing a bunch of chemicals which create a gas, which is definitely something you can do.
She escapes by domestic terrorism, which is obviously the most logical way out of the situation.
And she just goes out.
Release. Hey, I'm in trouble with this federal agency. The best solution is to then release toxic gas in a federal building. There's no way this could go bad.
So there's something interesting. So right after she's escaping, okay, and they talk about how they're tracing her. The techie guy's like with the Cardinal, which I just still don't know exactly what the Cardinal's job is. He just seems to have access to lots of things, but doesn't have access to like important people. So I'm not exactly sure.
His job
is he a spook? Is he a spook?
No, he like apparently owns multiple companies that all have contracts with the government.
So he's an official spook.
Yeah, so by getting America to go into war, he becomes Tony Stark. I think that's what his plan was.
So they're tracking her. So they're tracking her. And the Cardinal basically goes, Winter, go after her. Then you have this scene where Winter is driving through this road, where instead of having a camera on a car going through this street, they CG'd the street and the car for like 3 seconds. And then she's in an alleyway that doesn't look like anywhere she was just driving. And she sees this phone in a dumpster and goes... She
finds an old Motorola flip phone in a dumpster. And somehow D'Artagnan was using that to mask her computer signal. And during this whole thing, we forgot to mention this, but there is a random dude who at no point in this movie is spoken to by anybody except for Porthos at the very end.
Well, the Cardinal talks to him, though.
I don't believe he does.
Well, that first scene, they're in the same room.
They're in the same room. I don't think he talks to him. Oh. Winter definitely does not talk to him. Nobody talks to this guy. His name is dropped once, but with no indication that that's who this guy is. There's just nothing. It's just a dude who's there doing spook stuff for the Cardinal. His name is Rockford, which is a slight twist on Rochefort, who was the Cardinal's right-hand man in the actual Three Musketeers book.
Mads Mikkelsen.
Yes. I'm gonna just putting that out there.
And basically, D'Artagnan goes to find Porthos at his house. All these Three Musketeers, by the way, are wanted people.
It was Athos first.
But okay, Athos, sorry, at his house. And these are all wanted people, and she traces them because spam always knows how to find it. Junkman always knows how to find you, which is true. That is a way they actually trace people. But he's at his house, and he's a wanted person, and no one's watching the house at all.
He's a wanted fugitive in America who is in America in his own house, just waiting to jump whoever shows up.
And they somehow managed to use a North Korean helicopter to get wherever they needed to go and attract
Yeah.
zero attention.
Back to America and back to their individual homes.
By the way,
Whatever.
just so you know, the guy who plays Athos is his name is Zizarth Wuku, and you have seen him in multiple films, but one I will just say he's the brother in Asian Schoolgirls.
Is he really?
Mm-hmm.
All right, yeah, all right, yeah. He's
but so basically they go there and they get in a little fight, and she explains that she's not that crazy, that she name drops Cardinal, and it's like, Martha, what Cardinal? You know Cardinal? We know Cardinal.
Say that name. Yeah, so she explains what's going on. She's like, I have this USB drive. We need to decrypt it. And he's like, I can't do that. I'm the hand-to-hand combat guy, and I'm not even as good as the girl. And so, not to say that women can't be good at hand-to-hand combat. I'm saying this guy doesn't have any purpose. So then they go to Porthos,
who has the best disguise ever.
And Porthos is just full of really bad one-liners throughout this entire movie.
You mean amazing one-liners? He has like this giant fake beard that looks so bad, and he's wandering around on a roof.
Yes.
What's the point of a fake beard when you're wandering around on the roof of a building?
Yeah, right. Super inconspicuous, Porthos.
By his house.
Then, by his own home, where he still has his computers doing things sketchy. Like,
and for some reason, when the Cardinal realizes, or the General realizes that they found D'Artagnan at Athos's house, and they go there and attack it, and she sets off sets the oven and microwave to do their thing and explodes it. They don't immediately go, oh, where's Porthos's house? Let's go check on him.
Let's go check Porthos or Aramis. Like, that would make perfect sense. Now, so they go to Porthos, and they give him this device, and they're like, can you crack it? And he's like, yeah, if you give me 4 weeks. And they're like, well, we got 2 days. And he's like, all right, well, the only thing we could do is we go to the computer that this device came from, and we could crack it there, which I don't know if that's true or not, but whatever. But they're sort of like, all right, let's do that. And he's like, well, we need 12 people for this. There's no way we could just do it with the 3 of us. So they talk him down. He's like, all right, well, we need at least 1 more person. So, of course, they got to go get the 4th Musketeer, Aramis, who is doing what anybody would do after they inadvertently caused the death of 100 people on an airplane. She is doing yoga topless.
No, when I say topless, she's wearing underwear. This is not the random nudity scene that I know Asylum does.
Unfortunately, there is no random nudity in this movie.
But, yeah, she's doing it, and then, of course, they challenge D'Artagnan and her challenge each other to a fight. D'Artagnan, of course, in the book, challenges every Musketeer to a fight. And this is where they cover that, and Aramis wins the fight.
Or not,
They sword fight, and I love it how Porthos is like, no, let them fight. Don't get between girls fighting.
Yeah, never get between girls fighting. Good line. Yeah, so not only was this the reflection of D'Artagnan having fought everybody, but also in the books, they all kind of go their separate ways at one point, and then D'Artagnan realizes that the prince is in danger, so he has to gather all of them back together. So they did a reflection of kind of 2 main story beats in the book, in this movie.
Which kind of worked.
Yeah, they did fine.
And so they need to go to this military base, which looks an awful lot like or I think it's a military base or subcontractor thing, which looks awful like a normal office building.
Yeah.
The heist to get in there is not that bad, actually, because Aramis goes in there to apply for a job, knocks over a guy who they targeted, who dumps coffee on her blank pieces of paper, which are sitting in a file folder. They're clearly blank.
Clearly blank. So she's
and she just shows him all of them.
Yeah, and she's like, hey, I need to print these again here, and gives him a hard drive, or not hard drive, sorry, a USB, and it's like, hey, can you just let's go to your computer and you can print these off for me? He's like, yeah, of course, because you're hot. So they go to do that.
Plug something like that in your system.
Yeah, no. I can tell you from having had to do cybersecurity every year for the last 13 years of my friggin' life, that if anybody does what he did, they're fired. Like
Forever.
you do not take a USB drive from somebody you don't know and plug it into a secure computer. That's not what you do. But that's what he did because she's hot, and that had a virus essentially on it that allowed Porthos to hack. Which I love watching Porthos do anything computery because he's just like.
They're just slamming those keys as hard as they can. And what's better yet is the guy he was hacking is hitting him even worse. And
Right.
then when it doesn't work on one computer, he says this computer's glitching. He takes the drive and puts it in other computers.
Sure. So he gives them double evil access to their stuff.
And so they hack in there, and then she gets the card from him, his ID card. She leaves, hands it off to D'Artagnan and not Porthos. Oh, and hands it off, and they get in there to start getting access to things. And while they're there, the security realizes, oh, this door is locked. It should definitely not be locked from me, and gets suspicious. And so they sneak into another high security area. And rather than having him bang on the door till they do, they let him in there. And he's like, oh, these people are making out. We'll leave you be.
Start making out. Because every movie that has a spy scene with a man and a woman, they have to make out. It's the only way to fool everybody.
While in a show like Daredevil, when that happens, they go, oh, you need to get out of here. And they go, okay, fine. Because they do the drunk makeout thing in that one with Elektra. But this one, they just leave them. I wonder who the heck is making out so much in there that the guard's just like, another one.
Secure building has the worst practices when it comes to being secured.
Well, clearly someone's making out so much all the time that
Everybody's always sneaking away to the room with 15 computers in it to make out. Is this what we know about this building?
And then they find out that there's just all these little things going on where they're trying to there's an invasion going to happen in North Korea. There's an event that's happening in 3 days. And they realize, nope, it has nothing to do with North Korea. They're going to take out the president in Camp David. And we need to get into Camp David in 2 days. So how are we going to get to past everyone and hack in? Well, I need a week. Well, we got 2.
So then
they fly another fake airplane. Another fake airplane.
Another very fake.
That gets tracked by the Cardinal and shot down by drones in American airspace.
Yep.
And Porthos does this little escape thing where they jump out and they remote control it, and it works well enough.
That's fine. So then we get backstory. So we find out that the Cardinal, Treville, Rockford, and Winter were also Musketeers at one point, but they were kicked out for doing questionable things.
Well, they said they ran the other team. They said they ran the B team that does a bit more forceful stuff.
Yes, and they did. They killed a bunch of civilians, and so they were kicked out. And then that was it. And then they used this for the Cardinal to somehow consolidate major power, and put Winter and Rockford as his spooks, essentially. So we get a little bit of backstory. Also, this isn't inaccurate either to the books, because Rockford was a former musketeer that joined the Kingsguard. So not inaccurate. So then they've unlocked everything. They figure out what's going to happen. So D'Artagnan proceeds to put Porthos in a headlock until he passes out.
Leaves a note.
And then leaves a note, takes the USB drive, calls.
And she says she's going to do this legal. She's going to do this legit through proper channels. Yeah. And takes it to the person who she's already been told by him not to trust. Because she called him earlier. Takes it to him, and he's basically saying, no one else has this? Okay. And then Winter shows up, and he did.
Yeah, so she calls Constance, meets up with Constance. Constance brings the general, and the general brings Winter. And while this is happening, Porthos wakes up, They find the note, and he looks up the general on the computer system and finds that his code name is Buckingham.
Ah.
Told you we'd get there. So, General's Buckingham. Now we know. That's where our Buckingham comes in. Then they
say we need to either rescue her or help the president, and they go, okay, well, we're going to rescue her because she's hot.
Yes, that's
essentially.
The president's not as hot.
And so Constance gets shot, killed, dead. I thought for a second he had a vest on. They were going to fake out, but no, he did. And
I was hoping he'd come back. I liked Constance.
And so this is a weird scene. Okay. So you can get Winter and the general take D'Artagnan to this weird janitor closet and hand her over to apparently Kane Hodder.
Kane Hodder, Dr. Kim.
To torture.
Yes.
Then you see
Kane Hodder's in this movie just friggin' randomly, out of nowhere. They pull the most famous Jason to play a torturer. Like, not even be like this big, intimidating dude, which Kane Hodder is a massive, scary human being. Instead, he's going to torture D'Artagnan with like torture implements.
Well, before we get to torturing, though, the general is then seen in a scene with the cardinal where it looks like they're on a plane, and they're like, we got this. We're going to go to Camp David. Okay? And then you go back to Kane Hodder, who's torturing her by dumping water all over her shirt, wet shirt, all this, on his hands, dripping off his body, and then he starts electrocuting her. Because, you know, you wouldn't dry your own hands off first. You wouldn't, you know.
No. It's Kane Hodder. Kane Hodder's probably electricity proof at this point. He is Jason.
And then the Musketeers come, they rescue D'Artagnan. And they're running through the halls of this building. As the cardinal, who was just on a plane with the general, sees them in the hallway with Winter and starts chasing them. Like, what? Where were you? What is going on?
So the cardinal's like, what, 60? Like, I don't know how old this dude is, but he looks like he's got to be 60. Like, late 50s, early 60s. And he is, like, keeping up. He's doing great. This dude's in spectacular for his age. Which comes into play later.
And so then they're going to rescue the president at Camp David. Because what's happening is North Korea is sending a diplomat via South Korea, I guess, to Camp David. There's no way a North Korean plane would ever be able to land in Camp David. It would have to be via South Korea. And the president's going to meet them, and they're planning on assassinating the president as they arrive. And so,
on North Koreans,
the general and the cardinal show up at the gate, and the guards go, "You're not coming in." That's crazy. And they just shoot him directly in the head, like straight in the head, point blank. And then they shoot the other guard. And they put their own soldiers there. There is no redundancy there. Camp David is one of the most secure locations in the world. It is not like a spa. And the army doesn't run the defense of it. It is the Secret Service outright. And there's only 2 Secret Service people there, even though I know Camp David has to have a lot more than 2.
Don't barracks. But whatever. This is the asylum.
And the guys who are at the gate. So then the general and cardinal go in there to do their thing, because the general's supposed to be with him anyway. And Aramis and them see the guards and go like, those are clearly cardinal men. Just snipe them dead.
No hesitation, sniped. And then we get our individual showdowns. So each member of the 3 Musketeers plus D'Artagnan has their foil on the other side. For Porthos, it's Rockford. For Aramis, it's obviously Winter. For D'Artagnan, it's the general.
Well,
for Athos, it is the 60-year-old man who proceeds to beat the crap.
Well, before they get that, though, so Porthos basically locks them out by jamming all transmissions, so they actually have to go do it themselves. So the cardinal has to then go snipe them, and the general has to be there on site to be able to literally watch it, because he jams it, and then he says his you didn't see magic word, thing, which I found quite pleasant.
He also dropped I don't remember where it was. I think it was while they were hacking. He said, the light is green, the trap is clean, which is a Ghostbusters reference, which I thought was really cool. I appreciate that. He also yells frack throughout the movie, which is a
Battlestar Galactica.
Battlestar Galactica reference. So like he is dropping references, one-liners, left, right, and center. What did he say when they saved D'Artagnan, Jeremiah? What was your favorite line?
Oh man, you can definitely say I remember this movie quite well. Remind me.
I have a skill when it comes to saving pretty girls.
Oh yes, and so then they have to go into. So the plan was basically North Korean helicopter lands and empties, but no one's in it, or they disappeared forever, and were maybe
North Koreans.
Left behind happened. Yeah. Left behind happened, but whatever. And then the Cardinal's sitting up there to snipe the president, which Athos basically runs and jumps in front of said bullet and takes it as the Secret Service does their job and takes the president out and takes him to a secure place, but they get killed by the general who walks in there, and technically speaking, they should probably be able to trust the general because he has access to Camp David, and he just shoots them.
Then he gloats.
And says that you should have declared war on North Korea when you had the chance rather than dying.
Which gives D'Artagnan the opportunity to show up. But at the same time, right, everybody's got their showdown. So let's talk about these showdowns. Let's start with Porthos versus Rockford. So Porthos and Rockford are fighting. Somehow, Rockford proceeds to point out multiple times that Porthos is a computer guy and has no idea what he is doing. But Porthos puts up a good fight. Rockford has to run away. Porthos picks up a gun, fails entirely to shoot him. He runs to the North Korean helicopter, thinking he's going to get away. Porthos then throws his tablet into the back of the helicopter as it takes off, which jams the helicopter. Rockford loses control.
Because we know North Koreans have amazing digital systems in their things, supposedly.
Meanwhile, at the same time, Aramis, Winter, have fun. They're fighting. They're going at it. It's pretty evenly matched. Blah, 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 blah. But then Aramis sees the helicopter take off. And then she sees the helicopter lose control, shoves Lady Winter, ducks. The helicopter proceeds to crash into the mountainside where they're fighting and decapitates Winter. Just
also, mind you, Porthos can fly a helicopter, which, okay, makes sense. But Rockford can also fly a helicopter?
Well, he's
a skills?
He's a sport. Yeah, so he loses control of the helicopter. It crashes into the ground where Porthos was first and completely misses him, which is super lucky for Porthos. Goes back into the air, crashes into the side of the mountain where it proceeds to decapitate Winter, which is my second favorite death in this movie. We glossed over my favorite death in this movie, which is where one dude is chasing D'Artagnan and Athos, and they trip him. Athos pours gasoline on him, and then D'Artagnan runs past and lights him on fire and just keeps running while he bursts into flames. It's fantastic. I loved it.
Athos, now mind you, Athos by this time has been shot once.
He's now been shot twice.
D'Artagnan's been shot. We forgot one thing. When they escaped, when they rescued D'Artagnan, D'Artagnan has a hole in their shoulder, and they zipline off a building, one-armed, with the arm that has a hole in it, holding
shoulder.
Tight. And Athos, who has also been shot, pulls out a gun and does this while going.
Hanging on with the arm that he had also been shot in. It's great. But anyway, back to our show.
Cardinal gets his fight.
Cardinal versus Athos. Athos, the Asian guy who serves no purpose on this team, proceeds to get the crap kicked out of him by a 60-year-old man. It's not even close. The Cardinal friggin' owns him. But then, as he stands there to gloat, Athos pulls the greatest move in any martial arts movie of all time, Johnny Cage versus Goro, and punches them straight in the dick. Just what? And we get the like crunch sound effects that you get in fighting scenes in movies as he punches him in the dick and then snaps.
And then
Sorry.
the general is with the president and is gloating about how we wouldn't have had to kill you if you just declared war right away and did this and did that. And the president's like, yeah, but I was a good president. And then D'Artagnan shows up and says, now we're going to do our duel. And rather than finishing off what he was going to do anyway, because he clearly could have framed D'Artagnan right then and there.
That would be logical.
They have swords.
Out of nowhere.
In Camp David, when they were trying to get into the secure bunker for the president, they have swords. And mind you, no other Secret Service have showed up. There's been a total of 4.
There are 2 dudes with the president.
And 2 dudes at the gate. None of others have shown up at all, even though gunfire at Camp David would clearly be like, everyone is going to Camp David right now.
Already there. They would be there in 5. Like,
and they have a sword fight, which ends in D'Artagnan getting him on the ground and just stabbing him through the neck. Not cutting off his head, through the neck.
Throat. And like, Jeremiah, for once, watched the movie before me. So he's texting me throughout the movie. And the text he sends me is, oh my God, you stabbed him there? And I'm like, that's got to be, somebody got stabbed in the dick. Like, that's in my head what I'm thinking. And then I'm watching the movie, and she stabs him in the throat, and I text him, and I'm like, oh my God, did you have to stab him in the throat? Why? And Jared's like, right? So it's like just out of nowhere. She could have cut his head off. She could have stabbed him in the heart, but no, straight through the friggin' throat. And you're just like, why? Why was that necessary? And then Camp David explodes as they get away.
Yeah, Camp David explodes. And they escape on their own with the president. No Secret Service has arrived yet. And then it cuts to a funeral of the general because they didn't want to announce that he had betrayed.
Athos had been shot before he killed the Cardinal. And so when they find him as they're escaping, he looks like he's dying. So they give us like that fake out at the funeral where it's like, oh, now they're at a funeral and they don't say who it is, but then he walks on screen like, oh, he's alive, awesome. So they hold a funeral for the general because obviously if something like this had actually happened, they're not going to tell America that a full-blown general
of the
just
Pentagon, probably. Yeah.
Yeah, like, no, I'm not going to tell them that. So, like, okay, that's logical. And then we get we're going to start up the Musketeers. We're going to get more people. D'Artagnan, you want to be a Musketeer? And that's the other one.
And that's after D'Artagnan was offered a job for basically whatever she wanted to do.
But she wants to be a Musketeer. Because all for one.
And one for all.
They do say it twice in this movie. So, yeah, that's Three Musketeers. If you can't tell, I've thoroughly enjoyed this movie. Is it good? Absolutely not. This movie is garbage, but it's very, very enjoyable.
So none of the actors are the problem. Here's my 2 biggest issues with this movie. Just 2 outright. Number 1, the locations are trash. Everywhere they film, outside of the office building they break into, is trash. It's all places we've seen before. Like, you could go there and we're like, oh, look, their I Am Legend movie was filmed right there. Oh, look, when they ended the world, they escaped into the woods. That's right there. Oh, look, we've been in this building multiple times. Oh, look, this office where the Cardinal is. That's exactly where the Navy guy was in, what was it? The 2000 Leagues Under the Sea one. And, random objects, different lighting.
Pretty sure that the room that they had the final showdown in was also in at least 2 other movies. Like, they definitely reused a lot of sets.
Every location. And then there's a random use of CGI. Like, if you can't film your car on a road, don't have your car on a road. We'd get the point when you show up at a dumpster. You don't need it.
Yeah,
And
the CGI was real bad in this movie. Fire effects, as always, Asylum, terrible.
Well, they
At least
don't want to
didn't
blow
have
up. They don't want to blow up actual buildings, and so they just have the crazy, stupid fireball in there. But the only other thing I would say is pretty bad is the editing is pretty bad because there's the bits like where we said Cardinal's on an airplane, but then he's in the building.
And he's in the building, yeah. And it's a little choppy. They also use that really random scene that looks like it came from a 1980 movie about Vietnam.
Oh, where it had like the North Korean soldiers, but it doesn't look like North Korean soldiers, but it also loops repeatedly, and they show it like 4 times.
Yeah, like why? If this movie had a budget, right? If this movie was like the Three Musketeers movie that came out a few years,
the Paul W.S. Anderson movie with a budget of a Paul W.S. Anderson movie. In fact, he could make this movie. He could make this exact movie like he did Resident Evil, and it would work.
And in actuality, this movie is more book accurate than any other Three Musketeers movie I've seen. It has all.
Are you saying airships and blimps and fashion advice from Buckingham is not book accurate?
I'm saying it's not. However, if the concept of a blimp had been around when Alexandre Dumas wrote Three Musketeers, I guarantee you there would have been a blimp in the Three Musketeers book.
Or the Four Musketeers, or the Count of Monte Cristo, not Count of Monte Cristo, Man in Iron Mask, one of them. Mask,
or 4 years later. Yeah, like it would have been there. But this movie's actually fairly accurate if you were to take the Three Musketeers, move it to America, and set it in modern times. Like it's not a bad concept
for some of the stories, because it doesn't have like the jet, like one of the famous Three Musketeers stories, of course, the royal jewels, where they don't want her to be embarrassed, where they try to take the jewels. They don't have that. They don't have a lot of the intrigue stuff.
But also, it's an hour and a half. You know, you don't have that much time for something. But yeah, it's not bad. Like the movie's bad, but it's not bad.
The production of the movie's bad. The actors and what they do in the movie is fine to entertaining.
Yeah, they did a good enough job because, like, honestly, the Three Musketeers are silly people in the book, so they should be silly in the movie. And if this movie had a budget and wasn't made by Asylum, it would definitely be a good movie. It would be a good, like, guilty pleasure movie, like the actual Three Musketeers movie is.
Well, and one thing I will say about.
Or the Disney's Three Musketeers that came out in '94 with Kiefer Sutherland. Is that '94?
Is that the one with the Bryan Adams, Rod Stewart, Sting song?
Yeah.
Probably.
Now, also another guilty pleasure movie. Super enjoyable, but not a great movie. This movie has everything it needs except the budget to put there. But honestly, it's probably one of the better Asylum movies we've seen, which blows my mind because IMDb just raked this movie over the coals. They did not like this movie on IMDb. I couldn't tell you why. I enjoyed it, especially in comparison to a lot of the other absolute garbage that we have seen by the Asylum. This movie is.
I think one reason is. Oh, go on.
It's probably, honestly, second tier. It's not Flight World War II. It's not Zombies. It's not Avengers Grimm. It's not. What was the one we watched the other day that was phenomenal?
Street Racer?
It's better than Street Racer. But it's good. Like, if you're looking for an Asylum movie that's not Sharknado, this is probably a good one to watch, in all honesty. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie.
And when it came to every time we've had a movie that's an adaptation of a book, it's been crap. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was pretty bad. The Knights of the Round Table was the worst. And that had Sarah Miracle Lane in it. Moby Dick, the worst. Journey to the Center of the Earth, they didn't even go to the center of the earth. The worst.
Treasure Island,
Treasure Island with the crabs, the worst.
But
This one's
this was amazingly book accurate for an Asylum film.
and
Like,
entertaining enough.
yeah, like we definitely enjoyed this movie. This is one of those movies that, like, you get your friends together and you want to watch something dumb. I would recommend this movie. Like, if you like Sharknado, you'd probably enjoy this because it's the same level of just kind of silly ridiculousness, but not quite the same level. But it's silly ridiculousness that you would enjoy if you like Sharknado type movies.
Okay.
That's my thoughts.
Well, let's get to the picker
Any
wheel.
pictures?
There are 0 pictures. But what I'll do is I will do what I can and put it after we're done talking. See if in the end credits I can put something. But there's 0 pictures because, but the poster was almost accurate. But let's go to the picker wheel and see if we get another gem or, groan-inducing crap.
It's probably, I mean, if I were a betting man, which I am, it's going to be groan-inducing crap. But let's see what we get.
Let's push the wheel. Can you see this?
I do not see it, no.
Oh, let's try sharing again. No, stop. Don't. No. Spoiler.
Well, Asylum, turn, show us the movie that we will burn, Dragon Quest. Dragon Quest is going to be our movie. Is this Dragon Heart? Question mark?
Let's find out.
Is this a live action adaptation of the video game series?
I guess let's find out.